Okay, so this video is going to be about homebrew, more or less. It's going to be about a few things, and this is the first time recording a video in a while, so I'm sure I'll probably touch on stuff I already talked about before in previous videos. I can't remember everything I always talk about. Now, so, fairly recently in my hour, because it's not just mine, turn myself down a little bit, in my Curse of Strahd game, which is no longer Curse of Strahd because we killed Strahd and we're out of Barovia. Um, my character, who is an ASMR barbarian, went through we'll say, just a transformation. They became a half dragon thanks to influence from Tiamat. Because at one point they acquired one of the dragon masks, and then the DM decided to take that further and make it an actual like influence from Tiamat. It's like a whole thing. So this is kind of what I want to talk about. How the DM designed the boons and banes that you get that my character gets from that transformation. How they designed it, how I might have designed it instead, the relative power levels. I guess a little bit of, I'll touch on some power creep as well, stuff like that, because that's also some stuff I want to touch on. Because first off, in this particular campaign, my character is probably far and away the most powerful character individually, partially because they've been around the longest as far as the campaign PCs are concerned. Everyone else, their characters have died or completed their arcs or whatever, and have in one way or another they've all ended up with new characters. So my character has the most like unique personalized magical items and stuff like that. For example, he has we'll just open it up here. He has a great axe that does an extra 4d6 damage on a hit. It's a +2 great axe that does 2d6 radiant and 2d6 necrotic. So with that weapon, and he also has a belt of fire giant strength, so his strength is 25. So he's averaging like 70 damage on a turn if both hits connect. And with unless he rolls a 1, his minimum to hit is a 15, 16. So he hits almost all the time. And I know normally damage calculations you want to favor that against a chance to hit, blah blah blah, but I don't care about that right now. He's doing like 70-ish damage on a hit or on a turn. Um, so he's doing insane damage. He's a barbarian, and now thanks to a year of downtime, his strength and dex are his dex is almost maxed out, and his con is maxed out, and his strength is actually a 20 as well underneath that belt. But so he's got that going for him, and also he has the white dragon mask, which does a bunch of stuff. Cat, why are you pressing buttons? Just a cat hitting buttons on the keyboard. He's got that. What else does he have? Oh yeah, the scythe is one of the other attunement items. Yeah, it's actually a scythe, but great axe stats, blah blah. Not what I'm here to talk about. So the white dragon transformation that he underwent, it has a few benefits, and I'll drag it on screen right now, real quick. So among them, I'm going to say the most impactful things are going to be the flight speed, and the blind sight. Those are the two biggest things right away. Um, like those are the most commonly useful things. The keen senses is something. It's not going to come up. He's not like that type of character that like really stop hitting that button, cat. I'm going to push you off the desk. is that he gets immunity to cold damage, and then this one was a little confusing to me at first because it's like multi-attack, but the character is a player character that it gets extra attack, so it's like those two things don't actually play nicely together. Um, so he gets a bite attack that does a D10 plus strength plus some cold damage, and then he has a claw attack that does a D6. And this is modeled directly after normal D&D dragons. Like 5e white dragon. Let's see. So like an adult white dragon. Let's just pull this on screen real quick. So, he also gets Ice Walk, but so like the bite attack does 2d10 plus some cold damage, like just a d8 for an adult white dragon, and then the claw attack does 2d6 without any cold damage. So the bite and the claw are kind of the same thing, just scaled down for a player character, which makes sense. Muted myself so you don't have to hear me drinking coffee that time. So, these are like kind of copied directly from from a dragon stat block. Then he gets a breath weapon similar. It's copied pretty much straight from the dragon stat block. It does less damage, but otherwise it's the same. It's got a recharge on a 5 or a 6. It does an amount of damage in a cone. It's cold damage, blah, blah, blah. Um, you know, he gets Ice Walk, and then there's some detrimental stuff like, Savage Nature, this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not super important. Like, this is narrative stuff. And these are the only actual downsides. It's narrative stuff, and those are more things that change his personality. But that's not what I want to talk about. So the way my DM designed this, and probably the way I would design it. So first off, I was I was thinking in before this happened, I was thinking, oh, it'd be really cool to get like a claw attack I can do as a bonus action because I don't use my bonus action for a lot. In retrospect, that would be bad because this character doesn't need to do more damage. He does more than enough damage. I don't need ways to do more damage. Um, all this character really, quote, needed were just more options, which is something that Breath Weapon does. Um, the blind sight is a really cool thing, and the flying speed is really cool. Those are the two things this character probably utilizes the most from this transformation. But something else I wanted to touch on about this, like in particular, this multi-attack. If I were designing this, I wouldn't have made it multi-attack at all. I would instead give the character a rend option. I wouldn't call it bite, I wouldn't call it claw. I would just call it rend. It's and I would key it as like a natural weapon, I guess. Or say because of the way all that language works, you could either say it's an unarmed attack, it's a natural weapon, whatever you want to call it. I don't care too much about those. Those that doesn't usually come up in a lot of our games in particular, but if this were to be published, it would be different. But I would probably just give this character a rend attack, which means it could be a bite or a claw, just something that does slashing damage. And do it would probably just do this much damage because knowing the character already that has a scythe that does a d12 plus 46 plus strength, this is much, much less. Way less. So even if they can do that twice in a turn, who cares? And it's also because player characters have different rules than monsters do. Like monsters don't get extra attack, they have multi attack. And it's usually keyed in specific ways. Like, oh, the monster can make 3 claw attacks and a bite attack, or it can make and in any place of any of its claw attacks it can like do a grapple, or it's usually very specifically laid out per the monster. But in the past like 5 or 6 years, a lot of monsters have been getting a lot more generic attacks instead of like fist and claw and bite, or like anything that's like more specifically named. It'll instead be something like rend, slam or like, and then just like pierce, depending on the type of damage it does, and the DM can flavor it however they want, depending on what the monster is and what they're doing. Which is kind of why I would just call this a rend attack, and it can be a claw, it can be a wing slash, it can be a bite, like whatever. It doesn't really matter. And ultimately, and also slashing, piercing, bludgeoning, those damage types don't really matter either. So that's kind of an irrelevant choice. Um, so that's one thing I would do. And all that really does, like, okay, sure, that's like technically a buff over this because then I could use the character could use the 10 d10 plus d6 twice with extra attack. But even like like the character can already do that because he has access to a bite attack and he has extra attack as a player character, so he could just do that. Unless, of course, like the way like this interacts, like every time he attacks, he can do a bite and a claw. So then he could like do a d10 plus strength plus a d6 cold plus rage, and then make a second attack with a claw and add rage to that, and then make another bite attack as his extra attack, and then tack another claw onto that. That would be something. It's still less damage, I think. Like, okay, here, let's do some math real quick. Here, calculator. So a 5.5 plus 7 strength plus 3 rage plus 3.5. So that's like 19 average damage if the character's raging for his bite attack. And then plus 3.5 for the claw, plus strength, plus rage. So that's 32.5 average damage if both of those attacks hit. And then if he can do that twice, for, like both of them twice with extra attack, then he's averaging 65 damage. That's less than the scythe. Or actually, no, it's actually pretty close. It's actually pretty close to the scythe. But the scythe has more variance because that 70 damage with the scythe, I'm factoring in his divine fury. I forgot about that. So if that's the way multi-attack and extra attack interact, then yeah, that is pretty much on par. I didn't mute my mic that time. Suffer, I guess. So if that's the case, then yeah, he's without the weapon, he's almost just as strong. So that's an interesting thing, but it's still at a side grade at best. It's not like an upgrade. He doesn't do more damage. Um, like theoretically, he could replace one of his attacks with that, but it's still around the same amount of damage, so it doesn't matter. Um, the breath weapon in particular, like it does what is it? 5.5 times 4. It's like an average of 22 damage. That's not a whole lot of damage, especially when he's doing like 77 or 77, like 70-ish damage on average if both attacks hit on a turn. So to a single target, this is nothing. Like I'm not going to use a breath weapon on a single target. That doesn't make any sense unless like I've used this several times as like an opening thing, like if we get the drop on something and like we don't have enough time before initiative starts to run up to something and get a full turn, I can just throw a breath weapon out and do a little bit of damage, and that's something. That's fun to do. But otherwise, he needs like what? There needs to be at least 3 targets in range for this to do the same amount of damage as just attacking would, assuming fails and successes and hits and misses. I'm not worrying about that. Like, but and that's damage spread out to multiple targets, so that's less valuable tactically. So unless there's like 3 or more targets, you're doing less damage with a breath weapon. So I often don't use it. Like I use the breath weapon more narratively than anything else. Um, So, that's a thing. The damage could be higher, but then he's using that more. Like, or maybe he could use it as a bonus action or in place of one of his attacks, but even then that gets wibbly. a bonus action might be interesting. Um, he's not going to use. He already has a lot of stuff for his bonus action because he has rage. He has his ASMR transformation that he still has because he's still technically an ASMR as well. He's an ASMR half drag, whatever. Um, so he has those things that compete for his bonus action. We've also got some. We've gotten a few free feats throughout this campaign. It's a whole thing. But he's got Zealous Presence for his bonus action. There's a few things that compete for his bonus action. So, is that right? I'm not sure that's right. Oh, is that, wait, 5 plus 5? Oh, yeah, no, that's right. So he's got a few things that compete for his bonus action. So making the breath weapon a bonus action wouldn't be terrible. But that's something else you have to consider whenever you're making something like this for a character. It's like, especially a character that's been played for a while. You and the player, like you as the DM and the homebrewer and blah blah blah, you kind of know what this character is capable of and what they do and how they operate. So you should be able to like make a really targeted feat. So you can make those kind of decisions, like say because this character already has a lot of use for his bonus action, making the breath weapon a bonus action probably wouldn't be that bad. Um, if it didn't recharge, then that would be a no-brainer. I would definitely make this a bonus action to use, but it's not. So it recharges all the time. It recharges on a 5 or a 6. So like maybe every third round this character would be recharging his breath weapon and just like throwing it out because he has nothing else to do with his bonus action past turn 2 or 3. So that's a consideration. Whereas a character that has tons, like that has stuff to use with their bonus action, like something as simple as a polearm master fighter, if they get this kind of, if they get a similar, um, if they got this, making that a bonus action would be even easier because they already have stuff to do with their bonus action. So that's even more of a choice for them. Or if they're a bard or something like that, this would be a way to weaponize their bonus action for a character like a bard that usually doesn't do all that much damage and isn't attacking that much. Um, so also the ice walk in particular is just kind of like a flavor thing. He's gonna fly most of the time. It's not relevant, but it kind of evokes like that idea of what the white dragon is. And that's kind of more what the DM was going for, just giving me white dragon stats. And like I said earlier, it didn't he didn't need to make this character more powerful. He's already extremely powerful. Oh, the other thing with that white dragon transformation, the mask, the white dragon mask that has a whole host of other benefits. Uh, did I write these in here because it's not in the compendium? It's kind of hard to read, but it does a bunch of stuff. Like it gives you resistance to cold damage. You get to add your charisma bonus to your armor class. You get if you have a breath weapon that requires rest to recharge, it gains a recharge number, which the transformation does. But you get dark vision, and then once per day you get blind sight for a few minutes. You learn draconic, and you get a legendary resistance. Now that's the fun one. You also like do slight. You could do a little cold damage when you're below half HP, which is not nothing. But so that becomes non-attunement, and it becomes part of the character. So it's non-attunement. So I grab bracers of defense on top of that. So that's why my character's AC is 23. Just so you know. But point is, the character didn't need to be stronger. Whereas if we were designing this for one of the other 3 characters in the campaign, it could do more. It could probably do more like directly offensive stuff. Um, but like that's what I wanted to talk about, and then more specifically the design philosophy of bites and claw attacks versus like calling it rend. That I'm a big fan of doing that because like you don't need to like really explicitly explain what type of attack a monster is doing most of the time. And just calling something rend just makes it like condensed and kind of easier for a lot of the design. Uh, but yeah, I guess that was it. That's pretty much it. Yeah, just some simple thoughts on homebrew and a really cool example. There was something about this transformation and stuff, but I think that deserves its own video to talk about like narrative transformations for characters because this also a narrative transformation happened to another character that changes their personality and what that kind of means. But that'll be its own video. Um, yeah, that'll be it.